The world in 1945 was a landscape of ruins and shifting powers. The colossal conflict of World War II had ended, but it left behind a stark new reality. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, faced each other across a divided Europe. This was the dawn of the Cold War, a time of immense tension. Ideologies clashed and the threat of another global war loomed. Armies were rebuilding. Planners studied the brutal fighting, Eastern Front, Pacific, deserts of North Africa. They needed new tools for this new kind of confrontation. Bolt-action rifles like the British Lee Enfield, the Soviet Mosin Nagant, powerful and accurate, but slow to fire. Submachine guns like the PPSH-41, brilliant in close quarters as in Stalingrad, high rate of fire, but they lacked range and power for open-country warfare. The German Sturmgewehr 44 pioneered a middle ground, the world's first assault rifle. It combined the best of both worlds. Soviet leaders saw the potential in the German design. Future wars would be fought by large conscript armies, not just elites. They needed a weapon effective in the hands of a farm boy or a factory worker after a few weeks of training. Specifications were demanding, simple to use, easy to manufacture in vast numbers, and incredibly reliable. It had to work in the freezing mud of a Russian winter, the dust of a Central Asian desert, and the humidity of a tropical jungle without jamming. This quest was a strategic necessity for the Soviet Union. The stage was set for a revolution in firearms technology, spearheaded by a young, determined tank sergeant who had seen war and dreamed of a better rifle. Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov was not a formally trained engineer or a seasoned gunsmith. He was a Soviet tank commander, a patriot who was wounded in the brutal Battle of Bryansk in 1941. Lying in his hospital bed, he listened to the stories of his fellow wounded soldiers. They complained bitterly about their rifles. They were cumbersome, unreliable, and often no match for the rapid-firing German weapons. These conversations ignited a spark in the young Kalashnikov. He vowed to design a superior weapon for the Soviet soldier, a gun that would not fail them in their darkest hour. It was a personal mission born from shared battlefield trauma. Driven by this powerful motivation, Kalashnikov began sketching and building prototypes. His early designs for a submachine gun showed promise, but his entry into the 1946 competition for a new assault rifle would change history. He was a largely self-taught designer, relying on his mechanical intuition and his practical understanding of what a soldier truly needed. He studied other designs, American M1 Garand, German STG-44. He wasn't just copying, he was synthesizing, taking the best ideas and combining them into something new and uniquely suited to Soviet military doctrine and industrial capability. The design that Kalashnikov submitted was a masterpiece of rugged simplicity. He incorporated a long-stroke gas piston system, which was known for its reliability. He made the internal parts with loose tolerances. This meant the moving components had plenty of room to operate. Dirt, sand, ice. This was a deliberate choice, sacrificing pinpoint accuracy at long range for unstoppable reliability in the worst conditions imaginable. The weapon was easy to disassemble and clean, with large, simple controls that could be operated with gloved hands in freezing weather. After rigorous trials, Kalashnikov's design emerged as the clear winner. In 1947, it was officially accepted as the Avtomat Kalashnikova Model 1947, or AK-47 for short. A legend was born, forged not in a high-tech laboratory, but from the vision of a wounded soldier who just wanted to create a better tool to defend his homeland. The initial adoption of the AK-47 was a closely guarded Soviet secret. For the first few years, it was exclusively issued to elite units within the Red Army. However, the true power of the AK-47 lay not just in its design, it lay in its potential for mass production. The Soviet Union's vast industrial complex was geared for producing immense quantities of military hardware. The AK-47, with its stamped sheet metal receiver and its simple construction, could be churned out by the millions quickly and cheaply, allowing for the rapid rearmament of the Soviet military and its Warsaw Pact allies. The spread of the AK-47 beyond the Soviet bloc began in earnest during the 1950s and 60s. It became a key tool of Soviet foreign policy during the Cold War. As the USSR sought to expand its influence, it provided military aid to friendly nations and to revolutionary movements across the globe. The AK-47 was the perfect export. Moscow would provide licenses and technical assistance. China, North Korea, Poland, East Germany. This decentralized production meant the weapon's footprint grew exponentially, far beyond the Kremlin's direct control. The rifle's simplicity was its greatest asset in this global proliferation. Unlike complex Western rifles that required extensive training and careful maintenance, the AK-47 was almost foolproof. A guerrilla fighter could learn to use it in hours. A newly recruited soldier could learn to strip it and to clean it. Its legendary reliability meant it could be stored in jungle caches, buried in the desert, or left neglected for long periods and still be expected to fire when needed. This made it the ideal weapon for insurgencies and for nations with limited logistical capabilities. This combination of Soviet foreign policy, licensed production, and inherent user-friendliness created a perfect storm for the AK-47's global takeover. Soon, the distinctive silhouette of the Kalashnikov was no longer just a symbol of Soviet power, but a global icon of armed struggle, available to almost anyone with a cause and a connection. The Vietnam War was the AK-47's global coming-out party. It was here that the rifle came into direct conflict with its American counterpart, the M16. Early M16s were plagued with reliability issues in the hot, humid jungles of Southeast Asia, while AK-47s, used by the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong, performed flawlessly. American soldiers often told stories of their rifles jamming in the middle of a firefight, and honestly, that was a terrifying experience. In contrast, the AK-47 earned a fearsome reputation for its dependability. The distinctive sound of the Kalashnikov became part of the terrifying soundtrack of the jungle war for a generation of American troops. Following Vietnam, the AK-47 became the weapon of choice for countless conflicts and revolutionary movements throughout the Cold War and beyond. In Africa, it armed anti-colonial fighters, Angola, Mozambique, Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. Guerrillas fighting for independence saw the AK-47 as a tool of liberation that allowed them to challenge heavily armed colonial powers. Its presence became so ubiquitous it even found its way onto the national flag of Mozambique, a powerful testament to its role in that country's struggle for freedom. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marked another pivotal chapter. The Soviet army entered the conflict armed with standard-issue Kalashnikovs. Soon the Afghan Mujahideen were also armed with AK-47s. These weapons were supplied by the United States and its allies, often sourced from Egypt or China in a clandestine effort to bleed the Soviet Union dry. A strange Cold War irony, Soviet weapons used against Soviet soldiers, blowback. In the Middle East, the AK-47 armed nearly every faction, from the Palestine Liberation Organization to various militias in the Lebanese Civil War. The Kalashnikov was ever present. After the fall of the Soviet Union, vast stockpiles from former Eastern Bloc countries flooded the global black market. This made them cheaper and more accessible to insurgents, child soldiers, warlords, and terrorist organizations from Somalia to Colombia, cementing the AK-47's legacy as the most prolific and impactful firearm of the modern era. The impact of the AK-47 extends far beyond the battlefield. It has transformed into a powerful cultural and political symbol, recognized across the globe. For some, it represents revolution, the struggle for liberation against oppression. Iconic, Che Guevara with a Kalashnikov. Iconic, African freedom fighters with Kalashnikovs. The rifle becomes an emblem of empowerment, a great equalizer that lets the masses stand up to technologically superior forces. Conversely, for many, it is a symbol of terrorism and brutal conflict. Child soldiers in Africa, drug cartels in Latin America, extremist groups in the Middle East. Its association with decades of violence gives it a deeply negative connotation. This dual symbolism, liberation and destruction, is central to its legacy. Today, September 21, 2025, the Kalashnikov remains relevant. Over 100 million AK-47s and variants produced worldwide, standard issue for armed forces in over 50 nations. Still the weapon of choice for irregular forces, insurgents, criminals and gangs, from the conflict in Ukraine to gang violence in major cities. Mikhail Kalashnikov, who died in 2013, said he designed it for defense, not offense. He expressed regret it became a tool for terrorists and criminals. Technology, once released, takes on a life of its own. It's a simple, brutal and effective tool, a symbol of revolution, a weapon of terror, a piece of history written in blood. The legacy of the Automat Kalashnikova is a story of ingenuity, ideology, and the unending, tragic reality of human conflict.